Today, the Holy Gospel comes from St. Luke. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, the women came to the tomb, taking the spices that they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb. And when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly 2 men in dazzling clothes stood before them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but he is risen. Remember how he told you when he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to the sinners and to be crucified and on the third day rise again." Then they remembered his words. And returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen cloths by themselves. Then he went home amazed at what had happened. This is the gospel, the good news of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, good morning, church. I've put a lot of pressure on myself for this sermon. It's the last time that I'll preach in front of you for the next 3 months, so I want it to be perfect. So whatever it is, go ahead and tell me it was perfect later. That'll be good. But I kept thinking, what's the walk-off? What's the sermon you want to preach right before you're gone? For those of you who don't know, I'm going on sabbatical for 3 months. I'll be back, I promise, in July. And I think an Easter sermon about doubt could be really helpful for us, because doubt's something that we need to talk about. It's something that maybe we don't talk about enough, and particularly on a day when we're all trying to convince you that a man was dead for 3 days and came back to life. I think it'd be a good time to talk about doubt. Anybody else agree? Yeah. All right, so that's what we're going to do today. And I want you to know, if you doubt this story, you're in good company. Indeed, the people who were eyewitnesses that very day use words like they were perplexed, right? Or they were astounded, right? Or they were amazed. In fact, in Mark's gospel, the women go to the tomb, they experience the whole thing, the angels tell them, "Go tell everybody," and they left silently. They didn't even know what to say. And so the way that it gets back to the disciples, the Greek, the English tells us that it's an idle tale, but that's actually pulling the punch a little bit. Idle tale is not quite as strong of the language that they actually used. It was more like, that story is bull hockey, right? That's what that means. So if you read this story, you hear the story and you're like, I don't know how to make sense of this resurrection narrative, I want you to know that you're not alone. And I, as a feminist, have preached this story many times from the feminist perspective. But here's another classic story about men not listening to women who are absolutely correct, right? Who are absolutely got the story and nailed it. Which is why I was surprised when I came across this feminist scholar who cut the disciples some slack, who says, can we blame the disciples for thinking the women were babbling about an idle tale? After all, 2,000 years later, we're still wondering if this story is an idle tale, if it is indeed bull hockey. Well, I want to just say, as a pastor, I want to say in front of you on Easter that we don't know what happened on that Easter morning. We actually have no way of knowing. It's ineffable. It is unknowable to us what exactly happened. Okay? So if that was something that you've been carrying around a long time, I think you can let that go. We are not going to know. No time in our lifetime are we going to know what exactly happened and if this resurrection thing was real. But here's what I do know. Here's what I know with beyond a shadow of a doubt. And that is, there is definitely life after death. You know how I know this? Because it's written in the cosmos. Every part of your body has died and risen again. You are 13.7 billion-year-old stardust that has died and reborn and died and reborn and died and reborn over and over again. So if you're feeling old, my friends, you should. Resurrection is fundamentally, absolutely, unequivocally true. And other faith traditions pick up on this really quickly as well. Jesus talks about this as the eternity life. But our Hindu friends talk about reincarnation. And our Buddhist friends, they talk about rebirth. And my friend, Father Richard Rohr, talks about how we live into the flow of life that comes death, and then life, and then death, and then life again. And then the great religion known as Disney calls it the circle of life. We all know this to be true in our bones. Resurrection is fundamentally, absolutely, unequivocally true. And here's what I want you to know. It's that I believe the resurrection is actually the love language of the cosmos. The love language of the cosmos. So if there's a creator, then resurrection is that love language, right? Because we see every time we have death, we have new life. We will all leave this planet so that the people after us can have a space to be, right? We know this to be fundamentally true, and I actually really like the way that Paul says this. You know, Paul doesn't know cosmology the way we know it, but he's pretty smart for his own day, and he says this: some will ask how the dead are raised. How foolish! What you sow does not come to life unless it dies. When you sow, you do not plant the body that will be, but just a seed. I don't know about you, but I think sowing seeds is actually participation in resurrection hope. Because I don't know about you, but I planted a lot of seeds that I needed a lot of hope to come back up. I'll leave that for Pastor Athena, who's a much better gardener than I am. But for people who are farmers, sowing a seed into a ground, if you haven't seen resurrection, seems ridiculous, right? Somebody say amen. Amen. If you don't know what happens when you take that seed and you put it in the ground, if the first person to show that to you, you'd be like, that is ridiculous. There's no way that seed is going to come back as a plant, Kevin. No way. Whenever I think about, people who sow resurrection, who willingly participate in the hope of new creation and new life, my mind immediately goes to teachers. And I really like what Scott Hayden has to say. He says, teachers have three loves: the love of learning, the love of learners, and the love of bringing the two loves together. There's something about a teacher that sows hope in children. I think back to all of the teachers who put up with me. And I'm talking about Sunday school teachers that I run into that like, really, you're a pastor? Right? And all of those people who day after day, year after year, pour themselves out into us when we're our most vulnerable, when we're our most painstaking, when we do nothing but roll our eyes and say, whatever, bro. All of those times when we show up at our worst and they show up with patience. Those are my resurrection folks. And I'll tell you this about teachers. I've never met a good teacher that was afraid of things that they did not know. All of the best teachers that I've ever come across, and I bet you too, if you asked them a question that they didn't know, they would say, that's a really good question. Let's wonder together. Let's explore the mystery between what is knowable and what is not knowable. Because the truth is, and this is the existential truth, there is so much that we don't know. It could fill a universe. And maybe even more than one universe. That's how much we don't know. What we know is infinitesimal compared to what is unknowable. And so when we talk about resurrection of one man, that seems like a pretty small miracle in the grand scheme of 100 billion galaxies that each have 100 billion stars. I love thinking about the teachers that pour into us, who live that resurrection hope. And it made me think of this story from my childhood. I think I was in about 8th grade, and I was in gym class. And this is a substitute teacher that came in. I don't remember his name, barely even know what he looks like. But this guy comes in, and we're playing basketball, and I am just laying bricks, just all day. I missed everything the whole day. And I'm like, blaming everything, right? The light was in my eyes, and that guy fouled me. It's everybody else's fault, right? And then you start to fall into that despair of like, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing well. This is going poorly for me. And he said, hey, you, come here. Come here. He pulled me over. He goes, do you know about the 2-clap method? I said, no, what's that? He goes, you clap once when things don't go your way, right? That first clap is like, oh, man. That first clap is, oh, no. That first clap is, I feel worthless. That first clap is, everything is against me. That first clap is, no one loves me. But then there's a second clap, he says. So when you miss that first shot, right, and you're walking back to the other side because now you got to play defense because you messed up, you go, man. And then you say, but let's go again. Then you say, let there be hope. Then you say, let's be a new thing. Then you say, let's do a new thing. Then you say, let's be forgiven. Let's move on. Let's get out in the future. And if you watch basketball, you'll actually see people do this. It's called the 2-clap method. And you'll see people go, come on, right? You'll see guys go up to each other and ladies go up to each other and say, come on, right? Let's give it the 2 claps. And what I realized when he's teaching me, this substitute teacher who poured hope into me when he did not need to at all, I carry with me. And now I look back with my theological lens and I say, that man was teaching me death and resurrection. Do that with me. Death, resurrection. You see, we all have a clap where we have to think about the past, and we have to be sad, and we have to grieve the last 2 years, right? Let's grieve together one time. But we also know that we have to have hope. We have to move forward. We have to be a new creation. Let's clap for a new creation. You see, our whole lives is this thing between chaos and order. Our whole lives is between death and resurrection. Our whole lives are between distraction and creation. And I'm telling you, friends, there is always a second clap. There's always a time when Jesus gives us new hope for a new future. And the thing that teachers do better than anybody else is they teach us how to believe. How to believe in ourselves. How to believe in a cause bigger than ourselves. How to believe that we can do it, that we belong, that the world has a place for us, that we are loved just as we are. And I don't know if you caught this in the reading, but I met a teacher named Jesus, and I can't get that guy's words out of my head. I don't know if you caught this, but after the resurrection, when they're perplexed, when they're confused, when they're wondering what exactly this thing happened, then they remembered his words. We all carry words of great teachers. And the thing about teaching is that you sow seeds that you almost never get to see harvested. You don't ever get to know. And the thing about being a learner is the teacher's not with you when it's time to make those decisions, but their words remain. So I just want you to know, friends, siblings, that God's got new creation written all over you. And if there's anything that the teacher, Jesus, has to bring to you, is resurrection. Let's give that 2 claps. Amen.